All right, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about two very important aspects when you're working with any digital file inside Photoshop, and that is image size and color space, or color mode of your documents. Now, right away, when you have an open document like this, there are a couple of indicators that tell you a little bit about your file. Notice in the title bar right here, we've got, of course, the name of our file, and we are at the current magnification of 50%. And inside the parenthesis here, it tells us that our color space is RGB, and we're at 8 bits per channel. So it's our bit depth and our color space. Furthermore, you have information down here at the bottom. If you go down here, you can see in this little area that we have the file size, which is currently 5.49 megabytes. And if you click and hold on that, you'll notice it gives us a little bit more information. Here we have our pixel dimensions of 1700 by 1129 pixels. Again, RGB color space, 8 bits per channel at 300 pixels per inch. So, to be able to modify this information, go up here to the Image menu, go down to Image Size. And inside this dialog, you'll notice we have that same information with some new information that we can all change and modify. Notice in this first section that we have the pixel dimensions. Again, we see that we have a 5.49 megabyte file. And there's our pixel dimensions right here. And we also have our document size, which is 5.667 inches by 3.763 inches. Now, these unit of measures can be changed just by going into these menus, and you notice we have various ones. Inches is going to be the most common, but you'll notice that pixels will probably be more relevant to people working in video or web. So, what do all these numbers mean? Well, the pixel dimensions is a result of this calculation here. You can see that our resolution of our document is 300 pixels per inch. So every inch of our document contains 300 pixels by 300 pixels, which makes this a relatively high-res file. And this number, 300 times this width here, which is 5.667, equals our pixel dimension of 1700. The same for the height. This number times this number equals this. So what if we wanted to resize this file? Well, if I go up here into the pixel dimensions and highlight the width of 1700, and let's say I input 1000, you'll notice some things changed. Well, right away you can see that our file size has dropped dramatically. Notice it was 5.5 megabytes, and it's gone down to 1.9 megabytes. And our dimensions, you notice the height changed in proportion to our width when we modified that. And that's because of the locked proportions here, and that's because of this setting down here. You can see the constrained proportions is turned on. By unchecking that, you can see that it does unlock it, and we would be able to modify each of those independently. However, to keep your images in proportion, you will want to go ahead and leave that checked on. So again, back to where we were. If I drop that to 1000, you'll notice also that the dimensions of the document changed. They went down considerably to 3.3 down to, and the height down to 2.214. But our resolution has been unchanged. But when we want to reduce the file size of our documents, in doing it this way, you'll notice that because the file size has dropped dramatically, we've basically thrown out information. We threw out detail. We threw out some pixel information, which is going to dramatically drop the quality of our document. Now, if you want to be able to maintain the current resolution of your document, but yet reduce the dimensions, one thing you want to do, now I'm going to go ahead and reset my settings, and if you just simply hold down the Option or Alt key, you can see that the Cancel button turns into a Reset button, so you can quickly reset back to your original settings. So now I'm going to change one thing. You'll notice down here there's a checkbox for resampling image, and now resampling is simply a way that Photoshop redraws your image in a sense. So when I dropped down these pixel dimensions to 1000, it threw out that information. So reducing the file size that way will not damage the file too much because you're making it smaller. But making the file size much bigger, which I'll talk about in just a moment, will degrade the quality of your image. But let's say you wanted to keep your pixel dimensions of 1700 1129. Well, if I uncheck resample images, notice what happens. It is completely grayed out my pixel dimensions, making it unable for me to modify them. But I can still modify my dimensions here and the resolution. So notice what happens. Let's say I wanted to make this a 10-inch file. You'll notice what happened. When I did that, my pixel dimensions remain unchanged as well as the file size, but the resolution dropped. So a quick and easy way to remember this, when you have resampling checked off, when you increase your pixel or your document dimensions, you are reducing the resolution. And vice versa, if you increase resolution, let's say I take this and go really dramatically up. Let's say we go with 600. Notice our pixel dimensions remain unchanged and the dimensions have dropped considerably. So If you want to maintain the current resolution or current pixel dimensions of your image, simply uncheck the resample and you can resize your document and everything will stay the same. Notice now you can use these scrubby sliders, and I haven't mentioned these yet. Anytime you're inside of a setting, you can drag over a name like this, you'll notice, and there's a little hand with the little double arrows, and it allows you to quickly scrub through your numbers. So notice when I'm dragging the width and I'm going considerably higher and higher, notice what's happening to the resolution. It's going down and down. And that's simply because it's maintaining this pixel dimension. Conversely, if I take that resolution considerably higher, once again, pixel dimensions are dropping. So, quick and easy way of resampling your image. Now, I just want to show, now this is a high-res file, as you remember. You can see it was 300 pixels. What happens if you increase the size of your document? Well, here I have a relatively low-res file. If we go under image size, you'll notice that this one is only 6 by 4 inches at 75 pixels per inch. And the pixel dimensions are 450 by 300. It's a very small file size, 395.5. So as I mentioned earlier, what happens if you pump in more pixels? Well, I'm going to keep the resampling checked on, and I'm going to highlight the resolution here. I'm going to input, let's say, 300 pixels. Now notice what happened in our pixel dimensions. It's gone up to 1800 by 1200, and that's simply 300 times 600, or 300 times 6 equals 1800. But notice what happened to our file size here. It's gone from 395.5K all the way up to 6.18 megabytes. So we are inventing information now. We're basically telling Photoshop, okay, I want you to look at the surrounding pixels of this image and increase that. I want you to pump in more information. Now notice what happens when I click OK. It's gone up considerably, but look at the quality of our photo. Let me go and double click my zoom tool and we'll get this to 100%. You'll notice that we get a little bit of degraded quality here. We're getting some pixelation, and that's because we've invented pixels here. We've told Photoshop to put in information. When you take out pixels, as we did a moment ago, you're not necessarily degrading the quality of your photo, you're just making it smaller. But by putting in that information, we are degrading the quality of our photo. So you want to be very careful about increasing the size of your documents when you're messing around with the resolution. Now, one more thing I want to talk about. We go back to this big file. If you go and create a new document, let's say you've opened this photo, but you want to drag it into a working design that you're currently working in. Let's go to File, New, and create a new document. So what I want to do is I want to create, let's just say, an 8 by 10. We'll do an 8 or 10 inches wide by 8 inches high. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 100 pixels per inch. RGB color space, 8 bits per channel. White background. Let's go ahead and click OK. So I'm going to go back to this document. I want to drag and drop this one into my new file. So I'm going to drag it up to the name here and just release. Now notice what happens. We don't see the entire image. If I click and drag around here, you can see it's considerably larger than the dimensions of this current file. That's because it's still at this current resolution at 1700 by 1129. But it's sitting inside of this much smaller dimension file. So if I zoom out and I want to scale it in there, I'm just going to press Command or Control T, or you can simply go into the Edit menu and go to Transform, and we'll do Scale. There you can see that this is the current size of my document. The viewable area, however, is considerably smaller, so you can just scale it down. This would be the case in many instances if you're working with digital photographs that are coming from a digital camera. Sometimes they come in at considerably higher dimensions and relatively low resolutions. Some digital cameras will give you like a 40 by 30 inch at 72 dpi. Remember what I said earlier, if you drop those dimensions, you increase your resolution. So if you took that and dropped it down to an 8 by 10, with the resampling checked off, you would get your higher resolution file. So a couple things to keep in mind. Now I just want to mention one last thing about color spacing. Color spaces, if you go into the image menu, and your first item here is called Mode. And you'll notice that we've got a number of different color spaces to work in. Now, RGB is going to be the most common because this represents transmitted light in a sense. Your monitor is displaying your colors with red, green, and blue light, and that's the current color space right now, which is RGB. This will not only show you the widest color gamut of your photo, but it also makes all the other tools inside Photoshop fully available. Now, if I go in here and switch this to CMYK, and CMYK is a print color mode, and what it does, CMYK does have a much smaller, let's go ahead and look okay. CMYK does have a much smaller color gamut means it can only achieve fewer colors. Not only that, inside Photoshop, you'll notice that a number of filters and items are grayed out, making it not possible to apply these in this current color space. So it's very limited, and you would really only want to convert to CMYK right at the moment you're going to start printing. So working in RGB is going to give you the most flexibility and the most features available to you. And of course, other color modes are grayscale, which of course is simply just black, white, and gray tones. Other color spaces that are a little less common, index color is a web format. If you're a web designer, you are much familiar with this color space. LAB and multi-channel are also very specialized color spaces, but you're going to find that the most common color spaces you're going to use are going to be RGB probably 95% of the time, CMYK and grayscale.